testimony from one of our church plants in Brazil that I think really captures the vision of living bread in a practical way. We had several years ago, we had a Mãe de Santos, which is a priestess in an animistic religion. Just think a voodoo witch doctor would be very similar. And her home burned down, her altars burned up, all of the merchandise that she had for practicing her craft of her witchcraft was all consumed in the fire. And this was an elderly widow, and she was left with nothing. And the church approached her and shared the gospel with her and shared their burden and their belief that they had a responsibility to care for orphans and widows. And they added her to the roles of the women that they help with food on a regular basis. And through that, they just began a relationship with her. And ultimately, she came to know the Lord, and she was gloriously saved, and she turned her back on the animism. And although people still came to her and offered to pay her to cast spells and to do the magic that she used to do, she no longer would do that. She refused, and she told them that she worshiped Jesus now, and that she often would bring them to church with her. And a few years ago, unfortunately, she had a massive stroke, and although she was able to get some basic medical care, she was sent home with a feeding tube and paralyzed on one side of her body, unable to talk, unable to care for herself. And she was essentially sent home to die, to the slum. But because she had come to know the Lord, because she was involved in one of these churches, the body of Christ rallied around this woman. And for 2 years, the church visited her on a regular basis. The church, with help from Living Bread, was able to provide the food that she needed to eat and survive. They provided the diapers that she needed, and they were able to clean her and take care of her. And they built a small group around her and began to visit and read the scriptures and pray with her on a regular basis. And ultimately, Donna Tereza went to be with the Lord about a year ago. But it's just a testimony that in urban slums all over the world, when the poor find themselves in these vulnerable situations, there's typically not anyone there to care for them. But because missional churches had been planted, and because the body of Christ had been discipled to love their neighbor as themselves and to bear one another's burdens, they were able for 2 years to care for this woman and to show the love of Christ. And not only was it a blessing in her life, but it was an amazing testimony to her family and to the community as a whole.